It's 10 o'clock, the headlines on BBC News 24. Hundreds of homes are without power tonight and 350,000 people are in danger of running out of clean water.
And there's more flooding to come. Tonight, the Prime Minister has chaired a meeting of the Cobra Emergency Committee.
It's an unprecedented situation for rescue teams. Now the question is, will riverbanks hold the water?
And I'm here in Abingdon, where many streets and businesses are closed as residents prepare for a surge of floodwater.
Also coming up, a test of tradition in Turkey. First results from the country's general election suggest the ruling AK party has a clear lead.
As the Conservatives hit back at reports of internal criticism of David Cameron, the Tory leader prepares to travel to Rwanda.
And in sport, it went right down to the wire. But tonight, Patrick Harrington celebrates after becoming Ireland's first Open winner for 60 years. Good evening. Now, we're just getting reports this evening that the Army is being deployed to help out in areas where the flooding is continuing, and we've also heard that the Navy and RAF personnel are being brought in as well. Swathes of central England are still underwater tonight, with hundreds still trapped by the floods. Rescue teams have spent the day using boats and helicopters to evacuate people from the worst affected homes.
4 counties have been badly hit, and there are now 8 severe flood warnings in place. In Gloucestershire, 350,000 people are running out of clean drinking water, and in Gloucester itself, the water is as high as it's been for 60 years.
Our correspondent Tamsin Smith's in Abingdon in Oxfordshire, where a large-scale evacuation is underway. We're going over to her now. Tamsin.
Well, that's right. You might be able to see the emergency services just over my shoulder there. They've spent much of the evening evacuating some of the residents here because the river is just on the other side here. And in fact, there is an old people's residence that's had to be evacuated. And the fire service are actually moving themselves from this place here to another location because the waters are lapping at their back door. And they're expecting the situation to get a lot worse. Well, the picture across the country has been pretty dire. Wira Davis now has this report from Tewkesbury.
It's one of the biggest rescue operations this country has ever seen. Huge swathes of central and western England under siege from rivers swollen by incessant heavy rain. Here in Tewkesbury, the town's 75,000 residents were cut off, the RAF rescuing those whose lives were in most danger. On the outskirts of town, we found communities, businesses and homes where the floodwaters had shown little mercy.
You can just see where we had to just abandon everything and just get the people out.
This pub had just been refurbished.
And all this was only done in October. This was all brand new. All this carpeting, all this furniture.
Other losses, while less obvious, were more personal.
I mean, I had 2 foot of water in my house, at least. Heartbreaking. What worries me most of all, lost mum and dad's photos and all things like that. You know, it's something you can't replace. I mean, furniture you can replace and carpets, but memories you can't. I've lost all that.
Not only is Tewkesbury now entirely surrounded by water, making it in effect an island, there are more longer-term pressing problems emerging. This water treatment plant has totally succumbed to the floodwaters. That means the quality of drinking water here, also in Cheltenham and Gloucester, will be severely affected. The loss of this crucial facility means that as of this afternoon, freshwater supplies began to run out across the region. And those rescued from the flood are now having to do without the most basic of amenities.
Severn Trent said they're going to turn the water off because of contamination problems. So we've got filled baths and everything, and obviously you've got to sterilise the water, so by boiling it.
The scale of the flooding is hard to take in. In Evesham, locals said they'd seen nothing like it.
We'll probably have to move now because we can't get the insurance because we're on the floodplain, so it's just no point staying here again. We can't go through this again. We've got to start completely from scratch.
The minister in charge defended the response to this unprecedented event.
We are dealing with enormous volumes of water that are working their way down the system, and I cannot guarantee, and nobody else can, that there won't be further flooding, because there is going to be further flooding, and that may affect some of the infrastructure. So we're going to have to work very hard to protect things where we can and to deal with the consequences where we can't, above all to help people who are in real distress and real need.
When these waters eventually subside, the cost and the impact of the flood will be felt for a long time.
Well, to get a bit of picture of that situation in Tewkesbury, John Kay was up in the skies and he sent us this report.
Well, I know this part of the world pretty well. This is the region where I live and where I work, but tonight it is utterly unrecognisable. If we press a couple of buttons, I can show you a live picture down there. Look, that is the River Severn. Now, it should fit between those trees through the bridge. If we pull out, you'll see what it has become, just how wide it is this evening. That is the River Severn. It's still rising now, and if we go round to the north looking towards Evesham in Worcestershire, you'll see that is the River Avon, and again it's exactly the same situation. And the trouble is, where those two rivers converge is Tewkesbury below us now, and we've already seen in that piece the trouble that they are having in Tewkesbury. But it's not just Tewkesbury. If we turn around, you'll realise that tonight Gloucestershire's countryside looks more like the Florida Everglades. Just look at that. Over there in the distance is the city of Gloucester, and I'm told they're desperately trying at the moment to stop an electricity substation there from flooding. If that happens, up to 500,000 homes could be without power tonight, and that's on top of the problems they've got at the moment with potentially a shortage of water.
And John, the problem is, as you say, keeping the river in their banks. It's one thing out here in the countryside, it's another when it gets to cities. How are the towns and the cities able to withstand it? With Tewkesbury, looks like it's nearly gone already. What about further down?
Well, Gloucester is the big regional city in this county, of course. For example, there's a prison there close to the water. Now, the governor said that he didn't think he would evacuate the prison, but in the last hour or so, colleagues have told me they've seen a number of prison vans heading inwards. Now, we don't know whether there's an evacuation underway, but clearly you don't normally get prison vans turning up somewhere on a Sunday afternoon. I mean, Gloucester is breaching itself now for the worst. And, you know, we have to remember it's now Sunday evening. People watching this might have been away for the weekend, might not have seen much TV, but, you know, it's 48 hours now since this started. The River Severn there below us is still rising, and people who live along here are just wondering how long this can possibly go on for, how much worse it really can get.
Tides come in the Severn as well. Do they affect it that far up? Do you get water coming back? Does the tidal flow have an effect on this?
Yeah, it does, and the tide with the rain as well coming down from the Welsh mountains. What normally happens when you have heavy rain in this part of the world is that it washes down over the following few days. So, you know, it was raining this afternoon. It hasn't rained for a few hours now, but every time it rains, people below here think, right, well, that won't actually hit us from the mountains for another couple of days. So that plus the tide, you know, it's bad news. And it's, you know, looking down there, these should be fields full of crops that farmers are looking after. We hear a lot about householders, but it's also agriculture. It's businesses that have been affected. You know, we've seen a lot when the floods hit the north about the cost of these floods. We can't really assess the cost of these floods here yet because we can't get into many of these places to see the damage, which is why the helicopter is so useful.